I think we're good.
Everyone can see that?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll just say thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak to your group today. As you will find out, we are a very, 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 very new group. I think this is probably like one of our first speaking appearances and kind of our first like little debut into the community. So we appreciate this opportunity. And so we'll introduce ourselves first. My name is Greta Gook. I'm currently the director of the Detroit Lakes Public Library. I've been
Greta, you just muted yourself.
Yeah, am I unmuted now? Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. I'm the director of the library. Did I say that? Did you hear that? No?
Yes.
My name is Greta Gook. I'm the director of the Detroit Lakes Public Library. I'm originally from Perm, as where I grew up and was raised in the small town of Perm, and graduated high school and moved away, and was fortunate to live in a couple of our bigger urban areas. Minneapolis, Milwaukee would be the biggest. Before moving back to Perm about 3 years ago and beginning to work at the library and settling back into my home area. So that is me in a nutshell. Karen?
Yeah, I am Karen Pfeiffer. I'm the West Community Health Leader for Essentia. I know most of you. Yeah, I'm blessed to be a part of this group and share our story with you.
Kendra?
Hi, my name is Kendra Wolf, and I have lived around the Detroit Lakes area for the past 6 or 7 years. I am a stay-at-home mom and new kind of to this conversation, but just working towards educating myself and others so that I can educate my son. So thanks for having us today.
And Becca.
Hi, my name is Becca Dallinger, and I live up in Ogama, Minnesota, and with my 2 kids and husband, and I've been working with the University of Minnesota on a artist residency and arts project called the Big River Continuum that's based out of the Itasca Biological Field Station in Itasca.
Thank you. So we are 4 members of our 6-member leadership team. So we also have Becca Kent and Teresa Scar, who were not able to be here. So we are Lakes Area Surge, which Surge is showing up for racial justice. So Lakes Area Surge, strengthening inclusion, diversity, and equity. And we are now a chapter of Surge National, which Karen is going to kind of talk more about our beginnings. But showing up for racial justice is a national organization. It began about 2008 or 2009. So it's still, I would say, comparatively a pretty young organization. I encourage you, if you're interested, they have a lot of information on their website, showingupforracialjustice.org, not only about the organization, but also a lot of resources about racial justice and learning more and how to get involved either as a part of Surge or maybe through other entities. From their website, it's a national network of groups and individuals working for racial justice through community organizing, mobilizing, and education. Surge moves white people to act as part of a multiracial majority for justice with passion and accountability. And that is kind of a point, is that it's white people organizing. If you, the more I read about racism and racial justice, you know, they'll say like for a lot of people, this is a problem perhaps for white people to figure out and to understand and to actively work against. And so that really is the focus of Surge, and I'd underscore that, is that it is intended to be a collective of white people organizing towards racial justice. And then there are chapters all across the United States, but in Minnesota, we would make the third chapter. So before us, there is Surge Northland, which is out of Duluth, and then Surge Minnesota, which is out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. And then we are Lakes Area Surge, so Becker County, Otter Tail County, you know, really this whole area is what we're focusing on. So I'm gonna pass it to Karen, who is gonna give us just a little summary of the beginnings of our chapter.
Great, thanks, Greta. So as part of my work in addressing health equity across Becker County, one of the things that we've known for a long time in the public health world is that racism is one of the root causes of inequities, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But after the events of George Floyd, there was just really an opportunity to move forward and say, how can we include addressing racism as part of our work in looking at health equity. And so I put some feelers out in the community, so to some of the other nonprofits and organizations that I know that are, I thought would be more interested in this type of work, to ask, you know, is there currently work being led? And if there is, how can we partner? And if not, what does that opportunity look like? And quickly came to understand that there was not a group that was clearly leading racial equity work. That was primarily a Caucasian group in the Detroit Lakes area. And so started gathering people together who had an interest in this topic to talk more and learn more about what does that mean. And so we did some quick brainstorming to come up with what are some things that we can do right away, and then how do we dive deeper into this topic, and how do we engage more voices around the table. And so some of the quick wins were we created a website page on our Becker County Energized site that has links to information about racism and health equity, and understanding that that information. We started forming a group of Caucasian people to organize. There's about 35 people in that group, the large group. And then we also created a group of accountability partners, and those are people of color from the area. We have mostly, the majority of them are Native American. We do have Asian American and African American people represented in that population as well. And really started having conversations about what does racism look like locally? What does it feel like? Where do we see it? And that group really helps us drive the work forward and keeps us accountable to doing what needs to be done, and not necessarily working on the easy pat on the back things, but really working on those deeper issues. And the group identified also pretty early on that there was value in becoming part of a national Surge organization. And so we've moved through the steps to become Surge, like Greta mentioned. And we now have a liaison out of California that's helping lead the way and share resources. And so we've got a 6-person leadership team, like she said, some great ladies working together on this. I would say we continue to learn as we go. And, and so far, it's just been very rewarding, and we've been able to open our eyes to some opportunities and experiences that have been very beneficial. So we have formed 2 subgroups, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And so now those subgroups are really ready to dive into how do we do this work well. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Karen. Perfect. Kendra?
All right, so next we have our Lakes Area Surge organizational plan, and this is a draft. We have pretty much decided from the beginning that this will be forever evolving and changing as we grow and continue to educate and learn more ourselves. But our mission is for the Lakes Area Surge is a nonpartisan collective of people in northern Minnesota that envisions a world without institutional racism, white privilege, and systemic violence against communities of color. Our vision is we educate ourselves and seek a society where we struggle together with love for justice, human dignity, and a sustainable world. Sorry.
Thanks, Kendra. Back to Karen. And yeah, just tell me when to
Yeah.
advance the slides.
Okay. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about racism. A lot of people, you know, we recognize when we hear somebody say something that's clearly racist, those are the things that are really easy to identify. Some of the things that are really difficult to identify, and like I mentioned, that really lead to racism being one of the number one root causes of health inequities, is the way that it shows up in our society in ways that aren't really clear to us. And so when we look at the issues on the tree here that are above the ground, these are things that we see in people we know, right? They're mental health, incarceration, homelessness, domestic violence, substance use. Those are issues that people experience. And so we see disparities happening there. The things that happen in our society that um, aren't always the cause, but have a higher probability of causing those issues are the things that are really in those roots. So they're adverse community environments. And what we know is that people of color, if you're born as a person of color, there's a higher likelihood that you are going to experience those things. And so structural racism, a lot of times are non-intentional things that are exist in our society that cause people of color to be oppressed or experience disparities. And it's related to housing, it's about policies, it's about poverty, and those different things shape us and they develop who we are as part of our human being. And so then as adults and sometimes even children, you see a lot of the things on the top of the tree as those adverse effects that are caused from those environments. Next slide, please. And we share these statistics. I just want to push this out there, not as a way to shame or blame or make anybody feel bad. It's one of those things, if we don't talk about it, we can't fix it. And so really we're sharing this more as a way to talk about the fact that it does exist. And so there is an opportunity, and that's really why we're here. We also see the racial gap in our local schools. These are current statistics about the disciplinary gap, and just showing that in each of the schools in Becker County about disciplinary rates with youth, and how if you're a Native American or Alaskan Native student, that you are 3.7 to 5.6 times more likely to be disciplined or suspended as white students. And also, as you can see in Detroit Lakes, that white students are more likely to be enrolled in advanced classes. Okay, next slide, please. One of the other things is I wanted to just give you a little comparison. You'll see I included Becker, Polk, and Norman County here, just so you could see kind of the drastic change. Out of the total population in the county, we know that 13% of Becker County are people that are minorities. And yet, when we look at the percent of people that are receiving substance use treatment, it's 59% minorities. So there's a drastic disparity there happening. We also know that of that 59%, 48% of them are Native American. I also included statistics about of the people that are receiving substance use treatment. 24% of them did not complete high school, and 27% report mental illness as a barrier. And you can see in the other two counties, mental illness is a greater barrier. And I included that because it's really important to note that connection between school and discipline and what we see then as adults and people in substance use. They're all related things. So, and I did also include a statistic on the bottom. Minnesota and North Dakota on a national ranking are actually some rank highest for racial disparities, and Black people are 5.5 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana use here than in other states. Okay, next slide. One of the other things to note is also when we think about specific health disparities, substance use is a health issue. We also have obesity, and so here you can see, especially in Native American populations, the obesity rate is close to 50% compared to white, which we're down in about that 27% range, 28%. Next slide. Okay.
Thank you, Karen. So it's been quite an experience forming this chapter in this group. We're really kind of just building things from the ground up and trying to find a structure that works for us. So we do have a large group that meets, but then we also open it up for the opportunity for people to join a subgroup. And really our idea is that the work happens within these subgroups. So subgroup 1 has 3 leaders, and one of the leaders, Becca Dallinger, is going to just talk about what subgroup 1 is doing.
Yeah. Well, we are just like Greta was saying, we're just in the beginnings of beginnings. We've had one meeting and we're small but mighty when it comes to our group. So our people are interested in getting more involved with Surge. You could go through Greta because we'll gradually grow as an education subgroup. Right now our original mission, or we were working with at this point, was strengthening diversity and culture, which really included more towards our Native folks of traditional Indigenous practices and celebration. Within this collective of people who are part of this subgroup, we are going to examine and look at that for the inclusion and really garner more of our mission and actions based around what is coming from also from people that we're interviewing in the community who are people of color, just to really be understand some of the education issues that are coming from all of our community and our inclusive community. So our first meeting is really about getting to know each other first, understanding the diversity within our group, even as white people. Maybe it's class, it's just like where you grew up, how you are, things that we didn't know, who's German, who's got a biracial relationship. All these different things are part of what we've learning about in for the education subgroup, about how we first have to create relationship with each other and also start to educate ourselves about racism and to get to that place of understanding what we're going to go forward with for actions. And so there's lots to do and lots to have happen. And if anybody's interested from this group, we are always, you're always welcome.
Thanks, Becca. And then subgroup 2, it's influencing policy, systems, and environments is the mission of that one. We just had our first meeting this past week, so very much again in the starter stages. We'll be meeting again in November. And our November meeting, we're planning on really trying to identify priorities and focus areas for this subgroup. But really our goals for this group is to identify where racial injustice shows up in policies, systems, and environments, and then actively working to dismantle it. So I would just give a pitch. If you are interested, we are, anyone is welcome to join. We do have the big group that meets. So if you just want to join those meetings for a while and learn more, you could, enter that way. Or if you're interested in one of the subgroups, you can email Karen, has a nice email list, which she sends out meeting notices and updates on the group. So the best way would be just to email Karen, and all of her emails at the top, and then all the rest of our emails are there. But just let her know that you would like to get on that email list. And then like right now, it's a pretty informal joining. There's no really official joining thing. It's just show up to a meeting, and that's about it. Just show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just wanted to share a few resources if you are interested in learning more. This book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, was published in 2019. Ibram X. Kendi is a professor of history. He's the founding director of the Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research. It really is a really good primer, starting point if you just want to get some basic groundwork, get some basic knowledge. It's an interesting book to read because he weaves in history and law and science and his own awakening to anti-racism, and he focuses on different subject areas, but each chapter starts with like definitions, and I think he really does a good job of like explaining like this is what we're talking about and really getting the language, getting you to understand the language. But then he goes in and talks about, you know, he has a chapter on biology, ethnicity, body, culture, gender, sexuality, just really super interesting book. And I'm hoping that I can send this presentation to someone and it can get sent out, because I put all the library links for both print. For this copy, we have print audiobook, and then there's an ebook and an e-audiobook copy.
You can send it to me.
What's that?
I said, you can send it to Carla.
I will send it to you, Carla. Perfect. Perfect.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then because these links are all hyperlinked right to the library catalog. So find out if we have it,
Great.
put a hold if you need it. White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo. I read this, so it's a 2018. I think I read it probably shortly after it was published. Really, really interesting, because I like when I was reading, I was like, yeah, yep, uh-huh. I don't know, it felt like I was just like putting a mirror and just like pointing out all these things that I think you don't really think about, but when they're pointed out to you, you're like, oh yeah, yep. So she has been a consultant and trainer on issues of racial and social justice for more than 20 years. So she really draws on that experience and has a lot of like real examples of like training she's facilitated and different experiences she had doing this training with primarily white people. And she talks about like the challenges of talking to white people about racism, racial triggers for white people, just a very interesting book. So I would recommend that one. And again, there are links there for print if you want to listen to it, audiobook, e-audiobook. This one is I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones and Gilly Seagull. This is a young adult fiction book. And it's told from alternating perspectives of a Black and white protagonist. And it was actually authored by Black and white authors who told the respective stories. It's inspired by actual news story in a city after a killing of a Black man by police. The city, in anticipation of riots, they let the schools out early, and then they also stopped the public transit from running. And so what happened was you had all these like school kids, high schoolers, who normally would get home via public transit, who are then like stuck because all the buses stopped running. So the authors, who are friends, were talking with each other about this story. And so and wondering like what happened to this group of high schoolers that essentially got trapped behind the police barricade. So this isn't a fictional account, but I think it's very interesting because it's looking in young, through the eyes of young people, but then also like if you read The Hate U Give, which is also a young adult novel that really looks at, a fictionalized account of police killing and of rioting and of mass protests, but really putting you like on the scene. And so that one we have just digital copies, the ebook, but so the library, we now have Hoopla, which is another digital platform. And both of these are available via Hoopla. And the good thing about Hoopla is it's unlimited borrowers. So you don't have to worry about hold lists. So this one, you absolutely could have access to it because it's on Hoopla. And then the last one I would plug is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Was first published in 2010. This one, if you have not read this book, like read this book. They just published the 10th anniversary edition. And just when I was reading, I knew this was an important book, but you can kind of read through like, there's like really like just the impact that this book has had. And what Michelle Alexander really focuses on is the wide-ranging social costs and divisive racial impact of our criminal justice policies. So I think, coming back really like the roots and like really what's happening and then all the further effects. So The New Jim Crow, that's probably, read that book. I don't know, we're probably over our time, but are there any questions or anything further that our group can answer?
Before you speak, I'll remind you to unmute yourself. And while you're doing that, I have a question for whomever can answer. Is Stand Up for Racial Justice a nonprofit organization under the 501c3 rules?
Like the national group? I do not know. Do you know, Karen?
That is a great question, Terry. We will get an answer for you. I believe that it is from the national side, but we will make sure to look into that and let you know.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
I was just going to add to Becca that if you want to see a podcast too, that Kendi was on, the How to Be an Anti-Racist, he was interviewed by Brene Brown on Unlocking Us, and it's just a really good podcast. Kind of gets you started on the book if you wanted to know more about him. So that's another way to enter in. And then I don't know, the U of M had some of the books for free. Is that still going on, Greta? I mean, I think it ended, but I was just wondering. I knew you linked up to it for a while because I was able to get a bunch of books.
I am pretty sure
Download
this
them.
was just through the summer.
Okay.
Hey, questions?
Yeah. And I would just add one quick thing that if you're starting, books are a great way to dive into like just understanding the issue greater. Like they're a wonderful way to help get active and do something to help you frame at least the issue in your mind. Our group, we've had some of the harder conversations as we're calling out racism in communities and having difficult conversations. It's been a great place to be able to talk with each other about how to handle those, because we see white fragility really come out because like I said, people don't necessarily intend to be racist, but some of the policies and things that are being done are. And so we hear a lot of, well, that wasn't their intention, or, well, they didn't think about it, or those kind of comments, which clearly we understand, but we still have to have those conversations about why it's not okay. And so it's been a great place. If you find yourself having those conversations, this is a great place for you to jump in and find support about how can you have those discussions.
Go ahead if you've got a question or a comment.
So I was going to mention that our church has a book study group that has members other than members of our church, which is the Congregational Church. And we wanted to read White Fragility, and everybody was out of the copies. So instead we read So You Want to Talk About Race. And it is by Ejioma Oulu. And if anybody's interested in it, I will just put that kind of out there on our league website. It was a wonderful book. And we are starting another book study, and we're going to do Res Life by David Trerer, Treuer. And he is a member of the Leech Lake Indian Reservation, and also a professor. And if anybody is interested in that, I'll put that information out too, and you can email me and I will add you to our book study list. It would be great to have as many people as want to join. So thank you.
Good. And I would say for information and links, Carla Hansen is our secretary. And just to consolidate, I feel like, and I'm as guilty as anyone or more guilty, we've had a lot of email going out lately. So if we can kind of consolidate stuff about the meetings, forward it to Carla. And sorry,
I'll do that.
I just had brain freeze. If you need Carla's email address, holler at me.
I think all of you have my email from the emails that I've been sending out. So let me know.
Great.
I have a question, Greta.
Yep.
I'm wondering about this, how you feel about this book.
I just read the warmth of Many Suns by her.
Right.
which
Mhm.
was fantastic. I'll tell you my exact thoughts about that book. I had it checked out and from the library, and I had it at my house, and my mom came over and she
Yeah.
took it. She goes,
Yeah.
"Hey, I want to read that book." And she took it and she didn't bring it back until the day it was due. So I have not been able to read that. I
Yeah.
hear it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I
I think it's,
other
I
book.
think it's really something. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not finished with it, but it's, yeah, I did, thank you. Okay, I'd like to
Yeah,
talk
I was
with you
gonna
when you
include
read
that
it.
one, but I was like, well, I don't know. I could just had to limit myself, but yeah.
Okay.
And if you like that one, her other one, The Warmth of Other
Yes.
Suns, I think it's the word Warmth of Many Suns, about
Yeah.
the Great Migration of African Americans from the South to
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
a wonderful writer.
Warmth of Other Suns, I believe is what it is. The Warmth
Other
of
Suns?
Other Suns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah,
Marta,
very
could
good.
you hold the book up again? You held it up so briefly, we didn't see it very well. Cast, okay. Isabel.
It's-
And I
It's-
think,
it's a lot of research, and she talks about, well, you know, she visited India and Germany, and at the beginning just speaks about the US being an old house. When you have an old house, there are things that you patch up and think that you perhaps fix, when in fact you are just patching it up. And so it's a long process to repair the foundation. Anyway,
I like it.
it's great, and I'd love to talk to somebody about it when I finish it, and you do too. Okay. So it's just called Caste, C-A-S-T-E, as in the caste in that we're familiar with in India.
Good. Any final thoughts from any of our presenters?
Bravo.
Thank you very much, Kendra,
Thank you so much.
Rebecca, and Karen.
Thanks for
Thank you
having us.
so much, ladies. This is very,
Yeah.
More than welcome to
and Guy.
but we, like I said, forward any information to Carla. And since this is being recorded, we will share this via our social media so others can learn as well.
Great.
Great.
Yeah, and
Thank
all
you.
our contact information is in that presentation. So if you have any questions or want to learn more, don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you all.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.